Many people sense that something is changing in their lives, but they can't quite tell whether it's just exhaustion or if there is truly a movement of God happening there. That's why today I want to show you 7 concrete signs that usually appear when God is opening a new chapter in someone's life. These aren't theories or prepackaged phrases. They're real indicators. One of the first signs that God is about to open a new chapter is when tasks that used to be part of your routine feel disproportionately draining. And it's not because life suddenly got harder or because you lost discipline. It's something more internal, almost imperceptible at first glance, yet impossible to ignore once you pay attention. Think about those activities you've always done on autopilot: organizing the house, keeping up with commitments, handling your workload, attending the same meetings as always. For years, all of that felt normal. It was tiring, sure, but within reasonable limits. But then suddenly, those same responsibilities start to feel heavy, as if you're carrying something that no longer belongs to you. It's a type of fatigue that doesn't come with sadness or anger. It's more like the feeling you get when you're trying to keep reading a book that no longer makes sense to you. You can keep going, but the connection is gone. This kind of weariness shows up in simple ways. You arrive at a commitment and immediately feel your energy drop. You catch yourself wondering why something feels so heavy when it has always been part of your routine. It feels like the effort increased, but in reality, you changed internally. And this internal change is exactly the point. When God starts pulling you out of a season, He begins by removing the grace that once allowed you to remain in it. Things that used to work simply stop working, not because you fell off track, but because the purpose of that place has already been fulfilled. This type of fatigue is like a flashing yellow light. It's not telling you to stop everything, it's telling you to pay attention. It's preparation for transition. God will not let you stay comfortable where He knows you shouldn't remain. And when a season is about to change, comfort dissolves slowly, like someone loosening a knot so you can finally move. It's God gently ungluing you from one phase so you can begin to see the next. When ordinary tasks start to feel heavy for no apparent reason, it's not discouragement. It's a warning. When conversations that used to be pleasant start leaving you empty, this sign appears in a surprisingly simple way. You're with the same people, in the same places, talking about the same things, but something inside you has shifted. What once brought laughter, connection, and exchange now leaves a subtle sense of emptiness. Not because people have changed, not because you've become better than anyone, but because your inner world is moving, and what once fed you no longer sustains you. Many people notice this for the first time in social gatherings. You leave home excited, expecting everything to feel like it always did. But when you arrive, you realize you're present, but not fitting, listening, but not involved, laughing, but not connected. It's as if something inside you switched frequencies, and that conversation is still broadcasting on the old channel. Small signs appear. Topics you used to enjoy no longer hold your interest. You notice you're participating more out of habit than desire. The conversation flows, but you don't identify with it anymore. You go home feeling like you spent energy but didn't receive anything back. This doesn't just happen with friends, it happens with coworkers, family, church groups, people you've always loved talking to. Suddenly, something there no longer aligns with the person you're becoming. This is one of the clearest signs of transition, because God doesn't only change your path, He changes your interests, your sensitivity, your level of awareness. You start longing for conversations that deepen you, that align you, that make you think. You feel drawn to people who pull your growth forward, not your distraction. And pay attention, this emptiness does not mean you should break relationships. It simply means that the form of connection needs to change. God doesn't remove people, He adjusts roles. Some remain in your life, but now in a different capacity. Others drift naturally, no fights, no drama, no formal endings. Just a quiet mismatch. This signal also reveals maturity. When God is opening a new chapter, He removes your appetite for conversations that keep you anchored to the old one. Not because those conversations are wrong, they just no longer match the level you're stepping into. And when that happens, you often try to force the connection, try to revive the old feeling, but it doesn't come back. That's when you realize, it's not lack of love, it's change of direction. When ordinary conversations begin to leave you empty, God is quietly pushing you toward spaces where your mind and spirit can breathe again. When small things start irritating you in places where you've always had patience. This is a type of internal shift that doesn't present itself through big signs, but through tiny, almost annoying details. Nothing dramatic, nothing huge, just small things you used to overlook that now bother you more than they should. It's one of the clearest signs that God is preparing you to leave an environment that no longer fits you. It shows up like this. Someone makes the same comment they always made, but this time it feels strangely uncomfortable. A dynamic that used to feel normal now feels heavy. Repeated gestures, habits, or routine patterns start wearing you out for no obvious reason. And it's important to understand, this isn't irritation from accumulated stress. It's irritation from misalignment. It's as if your patience is being adjusted so you don't stay stuck in places that have already fulfilled their role in your story. God doesn't only use deep spiritual signs, he also shifts your emotional threshold to detach you from what no longer contributes to the next chapter. Many people panic and think, is something wrong with me? But in reality, what's happening is that you no longer belong to that place in the same emotional way as before. Your inner world reacts before your rational mind understands. This irritation shows up especially when you try repeating an old routine and the emotional weight doubles. Doing the same steps, seeing the same people, going to the same places suddenly feels emotionally expensive. You find yourself spending energy defending boundaries that previously held themselves in place. It's your spirit asking for new contours, new boundaries. It also appears when you realize you're already on the other side of the season, but still stuck in it for a while. This irritation doesn't come to make you quit. It comes so you don't settle. It's like a silent signal telling you, you've grown, and this place didn't grow with you. This irritation isn't meant to push people away. It's meant to push you toward your next season. It's a gentle, consistent pressure showing you that staying where you are now costs more than it used to. When small discomforts become repetitive, it's not instability. It's transition. Another extremely practical sign appears when God is opening a new chapter. You begin to feel an almost inexplicable urge to put things in order, things you've ignored for a long time. This isn't a simple house cleaning. It's a reorganization of life. And the most curious thing is that it comes out of nowhere. It shows up like this. You start organizing physical spaces without knowing why. Suddenly you want to clean drawers that have been messy for years, tidy corners you always ignored, throw away things you've been carrying for far too long. It's as if your mind is saying, I need to make room, even if you don't know for what yet. You feel like dealing with unresolved matters that have been sitting around for ages, an old bill you finally pay, a document you sort out, tasks you've been postponing that suddenly become a priority. It's an impulse to close cycles that never bothered you before. You begin reviewing relationships, commitments, routines, and noticing where you're wasting energy. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet awareness that some ties are loose, some responsibilities no longer make sense, some promises no longer match your season. It's emotional reorganization happening alongside practical reorganization. You clearly feel the need to lighten your load, as if something inside you is saying that the next step requires more lightness. You start looking at your life like someone who's about to travel, packing bags, checking what can stay and what must go. This movement is far deeper than it looks, because no one cleans their inner drawers without a reason. When God is preparing you for a new season, He creates inside you a silent urgency for order. You start letting go of what no longer serves you, even without knowing what the next destination is. And the most surprising thing is that this impulse shows up precisely in moments when, apparently, nothing is about to change. You don't have a new project, a new opportunity, a new open door. Even so, the desire to organize everything grows. And that's the sign. The outside begins to mirror what God is doing on the inside. This need to tidy up, discard, clean, it isn't just behavior. It's preparation. There's a kind of change you would never choose on your own, but it simply happens. And as uncomfortable as it is to admit, it pushes you toward a direction you would have never considered. It's the kind of sign nobody likes, but one that almost always points to a new chapter. Doors that close without warning. I'm not talking about small frustrations or easy-to-reverse situations. I'm talking about that cycle which, no matter how hard you try to insist, simply doesn't move anymore. The opportunity that seemed certain and suddenly falls apart. The person who was a constant presence in your life but starts to drift away without you doing anything. The job you poured yourself into, but that stops making sense, or stops wanting you there. And the most curious thing is that you know there was no sabotage, no hidden sin, no lack of effort, no negligence. It's as if you put in all the energy in the world and still nothing holds together. There are moments when God doesn't need to speak with words. He speaks with endings. Think of someone who spent years in the same job. It wasn't bad, but it was no longer a place of growth. She had talents that were never used, dreams constantly postponed, ideas never heard. The comfort zone became a zone of stagnation. And suddenly, after a company change or restructuring, she was let go. It hurt. It scared her. At first, it felt like failure. Until, a few weeks later, while trying to get her life back on track, she reconnected with an old skill, a forgotten desire, something that reignited an energy inside her that no routine from the past years had stirred. That closed door was exactly the push she never would have had the courage to give herself. Closed doors aren't signs that you're being rejected. They're often signs that you're being redirected. God closes doors you don't have the strength, clarity, or courage to close on your own. And when He closes them, it's not to punish you. It's to reposition you. The discomfort that hits at first is real, but the alignment that comes after is even more real. When something in your life ends without logical explanation, and you know you did what you could but still didn't remain, it's worth considering. maybe it's not a failure. Maybe it's a signal, a movement, a break that prepares you to see paths that only become visible once you're outside the place where you settled. When everything seems to be closing, don't panic. Sometimes the closing is the quietest yet clearest way God says, you don't belong here anymore. There is a type of inner change that doesn't come from motivation, anger, or external pressure. It simply shows up. It's a courage you didn't train, didn't produce, didn't ask for, but that suddenly begins to grow inside you. A courage that feels strange before it strengthens you. It's that moment in life when something that always scared you suddenly doesn't carry the same weight. Things that used to paralyze now only bother you. Old fears start losing their voice, and you catch yourself asking questions you never had the courage to ask. What if I try something different? And sooner or later you realize, that courage isn't appearing by accident. It shows up exactly when a new chapter is approaching. Think of someone who always feared moving to another city. She grew up hearing that stability is everything, that roots don't move, that safety is more valuable than any dream. For years she repeated these thoughts to herself as if they were unquestionable truths. Until suddenly, in a period of inner restlessness, a quiet but firm desire arose. Maybe I'm ready to go. A sentence that once felt unthinkable now sounded almost natural. And not because she had answers, but because, for the first time, fear no longer had the same authority. This courage that arrives before clarity is one of the most subtle, and most powerful, signs that God is preparing the ground. He strengthens the heart before he shifts the landscape. He adjusts the inside before he presents the outside. He awakens a boldness you never had, because it will be necessary for what's ahead. It's not movie courage. It's not the euphoria of someone who decides to drop everything overnight. It's mature courage, quiet, steady. The courage of someone who isn't trying to escape, but move forward. Someone who isn't tired of life, but willing to live better. Someone who realizes that staying small hurts more than risking growth. And interestingly, this courage shows up when you're more realistic, grounded, aware. It doesn't come to mislead you, but to prepare you. It doesn't come to inflate you, but to align you. When this internal impulse appears, one that doesn't feel like it's yours, but also doesn't frighten you, pay attention. This unexpected strength is often the initial push toward the next chapter. It's as if God were saying, I'm already strengthening you for what you don't even know you're about to live. When what held you loses its power, this sign is incredibly strong. An opinion, a fear, an expectation, a need for approval, suddenly it just doesn't have the same hold on you. It doesn't disappear overnight, and it doesn't turn into instant indifference, but it weakens. It loses weight. It loses authority. It's as if the chains start weakening before they break. And this usually happens right before a new chapter begins. Think of someone who always made decisions based on the fear of disappointing their family or upsetting someone. For years, every step was carefully calculated to avoid shaking things up. And that worked to a point, until, in an internal maturity process, this person began realizing that living like that was like moving with the brakes on. One day, after receiving a criticism that would normally crush her, she noticed she didn't feel the usual impact. Not because she became insensitive, but because she finally understood that that opinion no longer determined her worth or her future. What once paralyzed her, now only made her reflect. This kind of silent liberation is one of the clearest signs that God is preparing you for a different season. He doesn't wait for you to be fully ready to act. He simply weakens what keeps you from walking. Sometimes it's the fear of failing that loses strength. Sometimes it's the need for approval that fades. Sometimes it's the guilt of the past that stops dominating you. Sometimes it's the attachment to a place, a routine, a person, something you never imagined being able to let go of, that finally begins to open up space inside you. The most interesting part is that none of this is forced. You don't wake up saying, today I will set myself free. Things simply stop holding you the way they used to. What once kept you bound no longer defines you. And when an internal bond weakens, external change becomes possible. God knows it's not the opportunity that traps someone, it's the internal tie. That's why before he opens new doors, he reduces the strength of the ones keeping you stuck. This loss of weight, this unexpected lightness, is an invitation to move forward. It's as if God were loosening, one by one, the knots you didn't even know how to untie. When what once held you no longer dominates you, it's not just relief. It's an announcement. A silent sign that you're ready to receive paths you once wouldn't have had the courage to choose. If you paid attention through each chapter, you may have noticed something important. God rarely begins change with big external signs. He starts shifting things within. He changes your view before he changes your direction. He adjusts your feelings before he adjusts your circumstances. He dismantles what traps you before he builds what moves you forward.